On behalf of the Black Press of America, we are very honored and pleased to welcome Rey Ramsey. Brother Ramsey is an expert in many different fields, but particularly in technology and digital technology. Uh, Mr. Ramsey, the Black Press is interested in the education in general, but with the relationship we have with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they wanted us to focus this year on how has COVID impacted public education, how has technology. There seemed to be an intersection of people's increased responsibility to ensure healthcare and while we're trying to educate young people, but also technology, distance learning, digital learning, all those things. And of course, in some communities, there's still, in some of our communities, they don't have broadband access, some don't have digital. You and I in Washington, D.C., you know this is a subject that's been discussed across the country. But in general, first of all, tell me, how did you get involved in your company dealing with tech?
Ben, it goes way back for me. Something that you and I could probably relate to, given our ages. I'm fond of talking about the old encyclopedias that used to
Yes,
exist.
yes, we all, that was a must in every home if you were going to do good in school.
I remember the big old leather bound. Your parents paid on it forever because they were partial payments, and we
That's
didn't have
correct.
home offices. It was the kitchen table. So my parents bought that for us, and that has always stayed with me. And one of the people that I admire a lot in this whole sort of digital age is John Chambers, the former head of Cisco, and he
Yes.
once said that the internet and education are the two great equalizers. And so if you think about that in the 21st century, that's the fight that's worth having. And so that's been with me ever since the browsers became possible in the mid 1990s. And I looked at this and said, wow, this can open things up. And then in the year 2000, I said, this is like oxygen. And if you're going to breathe in the 21st century, you need to be able to do through a digital lung. You need to be able to breathe what's going on. And so that stayed with me. And so I started an entity in the year 2000, actually, called One Economy Corporation, which was focused on bringing broadband. And then we sunsetted the organization. And I actually brought it back a couple of years ago prior to COVID. And then when COVID happened, it was a great I told you so moment, because not only was I advocating for broadband generally for the entire population, my thesis was always the indispensable location is the home. And so although there are efforts in schools, which are important, that you need the tools in school, and that we have support in communities, so whether that's the Urban League or computer centers or libraries, those are all important. There's one place, 24/7, ubiquity in the home, the place of culture, the ultimate place of learning is the home. So whenever I talked about broadband, it's with a focus on bring it home.
Very good. And listen, Ray, you're right on it, man. Intergenerational concerns. I know in some places, in some families, as like you say, the home is the place where education starts. Um, some young people are getting exposed to the internet, to digital, uh, uh, at a very early age, pre-K. But then there are other communities, because of poverty, because of displacement, because of gentrification. I could go down a long list. Everybody doesn't have equal access, not only to broadband, but even to the basic, a laptop, a notebook, or something, an iPad, or something to be connected. What are you seeing in terms of the landscape across the country? Is the trend moving in the right direction, or are we somewhat at a stalemate?
Well, I think it's a tale of two cities. I think on the one hand, clearly statistically, we're moving in the right direction. Greater ubiquity of access is happening, urban, rural, black, white, brown. But The downside is we still have about 12 million students that don't have in-home access. And even when the studies show there's access in the home, you've still got only about 67% of those individuals who actually have a device. So you need to count both the connectivity and a reliable device, and then having access to someone else who knows how to use it and how to maximize it. Then you have other issues. So I would say the way that we're measuring is not keeping pace with the applicability of technology. So we've got to continue to rethink, how are we measuring? Because not all access is the same based on speed, based on quality of the experience. So there are a number of things like that that are really important.
Thank you. Well, this is a great timely discussion. Just in the last day or so, the Congress of the United States finally passed the new infrastructure bill, bipartisan bill. And in the infrastructure bill, there was some language, some word, and some prioritization of broadband expansion. How do you feel this legislation is supposed to be over $1 trillion to be spent on infrastructure, in addition to bridges and water and all the different things that needs to be done, removing lead pipes, et cetera? There is at least a acknowledgement by the federal government that broadband is important to the future of our nation. How do you see it?
Well, there are dollars, and again, everybody's trying to decipher the bill. There have to be rules written by our administrative procedure, and then figuring out what the authorizing agency will be. I would imagine that money will flow through to the Rural Development Administration. There will likely be money available coming out of Commerce. It'll be interesting to see the breakdown where the urban-rural split, how much money is purely hard infrastructure. Will there be any money like the way Obama did when he had a stimulus bill? He had money that was for the adoption side of this, because as you know, there is the issue of availability, which is traditionally the way we think of infrastructure, is the mechanizations of infrastructure, fiber or whatever the conduit, is that available? Then you have the issue of, is it affordable, which is a completely separate issue from availability. And then the third is, well, do people adopt it? And there are barriers to adoption based on literacy, based on culture and other dynamics. So it'll be interesting to see when we break it down how much of that is available. But all of it will have some stimulative effect on making broadband more available to more individuals. And so I applaud that. But the federal government is only one player, and it's going to require other sectors and other players to get into this.
Very good. In your experience over the years, and even currently, I know you've probably found some success models out there. Can you just share with our audience what you've seen works, and particularly in public education, pre-K to 12, and even from HBCUs or colleges and universities? How have you seen technology, in this case digital technology, make a positive difference in educational outcomes?
Yeah, I think that the most important, if I had to summarize sort of what's the common thread of something that is deemed as a success, meaning based on outcomes that we're looking for, it always involves some type of cultural dimension. If you do not meet people where they are in terms of a cultural lens, it doesn't matter. And so the old adage of, I'm going to throw a laptop at you, I'm going to throw connectivity to you, doesn't mean anything. And so as we saw during COVID, school districts which were scrambling to get laptops to kids and to do other things. Look, I applaud the fact that they knew that it was important, but I think if we reflect on it, we have to ask ourselves, well, does the teacher understand how to utilize technology as an instrument for teaching? Have we equipped kids with digital literacy to understand what's coming back at them? So there's a lot more work to be done, but there are some somewhat successful examples around bringing content, the pedagogy of learning, and marrying that together with technology. So there are some green shoots, there that are important. But I would say any of these things can never be looked at only as a school to student type of situation. We have to look at technology from the standpoint that it is both its own vertical understanding, but it is a very critical horizontal that cuts across subject matters and different ways of learning. And that's how we've got to start thinking about this, not in a silo. And so in too many cities, Ben, across the country, they've got these offices of technology or the chief technology officer, and they usually have the smallest office at the furthest end of the hallway. Right. And so it's not mainstreamed as a horizontal cutting across everything. How does government deliver its services? I always say when we think of service delivery, we should want people online, not inline. And so we need to think about how all those things cut across everything we do and say technology can be transformative if we have intentionality to harness it.
When we started out, you stressed the importance that education begins in the home. How do you feel that technology can even help parents, interact with their children? I know, and some parents, because they may not be as digitally literate as their children, sometimes confiscate, even forbid certain use of technology. From your perspective, particularly from an African American, because our program right now is really geared to raise public awareness about these issues among African Americans and other people of color. But what have you seen? Have you seen parents being able to not only grasp but embrace the benefits of technology, interacting with their own children in the home?
Well, I love the way you framed that, Ben, and brought it home as Black people, as people of color, because we have a cultural lens, right? And I was smiling when you were talking because I was like, there is no way in the world my late mother would let me have the kind of ubiquitous access to some of the content that's available. That would have been cut off. And so I think it's about understanding those cultural dimensions, helping people understand what's available when things are age appropriate, having the ability and showing people that they have the tools to add appropriate restrictions if that works for that family, and or the ability to monitor the history so that they can look at the history of what's been going on there, making it clear to their child, you're not going to erase the history. If you do, I'm going to know that you at least erased it. So I'm going to want to know what's there. But taking an active interest, it's just another tool where a parent can take an active interest in the teaching and the learnings of their child. And it's not to be feared, but it is to be understood. And so there is enormous power at that fingertip. And I think it's important that we think about and fashion programs to help parents to know you're not helpless in this. There are tools of parental guidance, tools of parental control where necessary, but also means for parents themselves to use it in their own best interest. And so once they become an active, engaged user, then it's better for them. Ben, I often say when we look at anything, whether it's any service, any delivery, if we go beyond treating, in this case, parents or an individual as a passive recipient of a service, rather than an active, informed, engaged consumer, and in some cases a producer, because there are career opportunities there. And so it's no question why things seem to work better in some neighborhoods, not just accounting for issues of racism, which do exist, but the issue of when those consumers or those constituents are informed and engaged, they know what to ask for, they know what to demand. When you're kept in the dark and you're just a passive recipient, which is the way sometimes foundations operate and other entities, they're throwing things at people and treating them as a passive recipient. You never get the right outcomes if that's how people are treated, because you're ignoring their culture, you're ignoring where they stand from a literacy standpoint. In this case, I'm really talking about digital literacy. Yes. So there needs to be that bilateralism associated with any program.
Very good. As the CEO of Centri Capital and Centri Tech, the question of workforce development. There have been many studies that show that the jobs of today, and particularly the jobs of tomorrow, require certain competency in not only digital literacy, but the new forms of technology, AI, artificial intelligence. Um, what what would you recommend to parents, to students, and even those who are planning to go to college? Because there's been some debate about the STEM field, you know, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. How do you see technology helping us to be the equalizer so that we can go out and get some of these high-paying jobs? Like I know in DC, everybody's looking for cybersecurity experts.
Yeah.
You know, that's a hot-paying job. So, from your company perspective, what you've seen in the marketplace, what do you forecast about the importance of having some type of digital learning, digital education as part of one's educational journey?
Well, there are a couple things in that. That was a very comprehensive question, Ben. A couple things. One is, I think as parents should insist that their schools, K through 12, have digital literacy incorporated. See, I'm not a believer that everybody needs to go STEM. Not everybody wants that as their career. And I think if we try to force everybody in that, I think it's great. And particularly if more Black folks would go into that career, I think that would be wonderful for a lot of social economic reasons. But even if not, there is a level of literacy in terms of the digital world that that individual is going to have. And so to me, that starts with the school. And so it's getting people comfortable where, whether it's computer science. So I know I'm a trustee at a college, and we are pushing more of our students, even though it's a liberal arts school, and we're starting work in the computer science area to say that's going to be useful to you, regardless of what liberal art degree you have. So even if you're an economist, whatever that is that you might go for, having that literacy in computer science or other related subject matters is important to you. So I think as a parental lens, making sure that there is curriculum available. And then I think there is an opportunity to reimagine some of these programs. Like I look at what the federal government is about to do now with broadband. I am hopeful, and what I am advocating for as a matter of policy are that there are apprenticeship programs attached to that broadband money, because that will stimulate a lot of economic opportunity. That is a unique opportunity to give some of the very kids we're talking about the apprentice experience that will then also expose them to job opportunities. So we have small pilots that we're working on in that regard that we call digital integrators. And so a lot of times when you think about multifamily housing, you will hire what's called a systems integrator, somebody who will bring technology through your building. And so our thought process is, why not create apprenticeship opportunities for young people, particularly people of color? Let them work on those projects and learn, and you get a twofer. You get the individual getting skills, little money in their pocket, build their resume, but you're also working on what people would call digital divide issues because you're integrating that building. And so sometimes when we don't do things like that, we're missing unique opportunities.
Great. And finally, Ray, all of what you've seen and what you probably predict you will see, what gives you your greatest hope for the future of the African American community embracing technology more and more?
Well, you know, what I get hope by is that you look at, and you know this, Ben, as well as I do, we're awfully creative. You know, as a culture, we had to be creative going all the way back through slavery to just survive. But as I was telling somebody the other day, we opened our own stores. When people said you can't go to our stores, we opened our own hospitals. We started our own universities. A lot of young people, which is where I get the hope, they get it. They're learning it. Even if they don't have the book credentials, they're learning how to navigate the digital world. And when you combine that with creativity, I think we're going to see a wave of new opportunities, new jobs. We have to make sure it doesn't happen are impediments that will block those young people And we also have to make sure on the capital side that there are resources investing in the companies that we don't even know about today, but that are in their creative minds. And that gives me a lot of optimism.
Well, thank you so much, Rey Ramsey, for joining the Black Press of America, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, and our program with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on raising awareness about all of the opportunities and the challenges of education. Rey, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's been wonderful.